Good afternoon, all of you. So today we are with Dr. Subhajit Ghosh. He will be giving the session. The title of the session is Sensors for Wide Area Monitoring and Control for Power Networks. So I'll be going through the short biodata of Dr. Subhajit Ghosh. He has received the PhD degree from IIT Kharagpur in 2010. He has more than 16 years of teaching experience at BIT Mesra, NIT Rourkela, and NIT Raipur. Presently, he is working as Associate Professor in Electrical Engineering Department at NIT Raipur. He has published more than 60 papers in different SCI journals from reputed publishers like IEEE, Elsevier, Taylor and Francis, Wiley, and Springer. He has handled research projects worth more than 1.3 crore from different funding agencies like GST, CCOST, CRB, and DRDO. He is presently involved in an international project on renewable energy with North Carolina State University. 9 students have completed PhD under his guidance. He was awarded the Best Faculty Award of NIT Raipur for the year 2020. His research interests include optimization techniques, control systems, renewable energy, and power system protection. So this is about his short biodata. Now over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, madam. I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to Professor Vijay Lakshmi and the entire team at BIT Mesra for inviting me for this particular Atal FDP. And since the course is on smart sensors, and so I thought that I would be delivering a lecture on how those smart sensors are actually revolutionizing the way we look at power system. And before starting the presentation, I would like to tell you that you can interrupt me as many number of times as you want, and until and unless you ask some questions that won't motivate me. So you are free to ask questions. The questions may not be exactly related to what I am discussing here. It may be related to anything on smart sensors, and I would like to have those questions, and I would like to answer your queries. So please come forward and ask questions, and that would actually make the whole session more interactive, right? So as I understand that most of you are having some basic idea regarding electrical networks and regarding power systems, a very basic idea. So that is the assumption that I am making with respect to this particular presentation. And I would be sometimes going to some to sensors, to instrumentation, and again, I would be coming back to power systems. So this is how I will be proceeding during the course of my presentation. So as you know that as an engineer, we are very much concerned about these two words. It is not only related to power system, but in any field, that we want to monitor the system and we want to control the system. So monitoring the system in a better manner is only possible if you can have good sensors. Okay, right. So what are the sensors that which we can use through which you can monitor the power system in a better way? And if you can monitor the power system in a better way, naturally you would be able to control the power system also in a better way. So this is what I would like to discuss. And okay, and then there is a word called wide area. So naturally, when you have a system which is spread across a wide geographical area, so for that system which is spread across a wide geographical area, if you want to monitor it, what are the sensors that will be required to monitor that system, to monitor the power system mainly, that I am going to discuss. And then this is a word which I suppose everybody of you might have heard of, even those of you who are not from electrical background or from power system background, like smart grid. Okay. Now here the grid that I am talking of, it is basically the electrical grid or the power grid. Okay. So I am talking of the electrical grid. I would discuss about how the existing grid that we had, how we are making it more smart. How is how has smartness been imparted to the electrical grid? And naturally, if you look at the various things which are smart presently, if you look at the smartphone that most of you are using, so the one thing which has brought about this evolution from normal phone to a smartphone are the sensors. Okay. So same for power networks also. We had an electrical grid that was existing for the last 100, 150 years. And now we have made it more smart. And how we have made it more smart, that is what I would discuss. What are the sensors which are responsible for making the electrical grid smart, that I will discuss. And within that, whatever the sensors that are used in smart grid, these are some of the sensors that are used in smart grid. One is AMI, the other is smart meters. Smart meters is a quite wide area, and what are the elements that come under smart meters, that I will going to discuss. Then I will discuss a bit about IEDs, which are known as intelligent electronic devices. And then I will be coming down to one particular sensor which has basically revolutionized the way we look at the power system, and that is phase measurement unit. I won't go much into phase measurement unit, as I know that Mohanta sir would be taking an entire session on it. I would just be giving you the basic about how a classical sensors is different from a phase measurement unit. And then I would be coming down to something called cyber physical system. As I understand, there is a session on cyber physical system also, but I would be looking at the cyber physical system from the perspective of an electrical engineer, like why the smart grid is a cyber physical system. It is made up of two words, one is cyber and the other is physical. How these two are interacting with each other in the smart grid, that I will discuss a bit. And then finally, I would be coming down to an important aspect of cyber physical system, that is cyber attack. Now, cyber attack is a word which I suppose all of you have come across at certain point of time. So how can a cyber attack be launched on a cyber physical system? And for that, how the sensors are responsible, not responsible, how by using proper sensors we may be able to avert, or we may be able to avoid a cyber attack, that I will discuss a bit. And then finally, I will be coming down to the conclusions of this whole presentations with regard to what is the present state of art, what are the future research directions and things like that. Okay. So finally, I would be starting with smart grid. So it is made up of two words. One is smart, the other is grid. As I told you, grid, I mean, we are talking of electrical network, that is, we are talking of power grid. So this is what the definition of smart grid by Wikipedia tells you. It is an electrical grid which includes a variety of operational and energy measures like smart meters, smart appliances, renewable energy resources, and energy efficient resources. Electronic power conditioning and control of the production and distribution of electricity are important aspects of smart grid. Okay. So right now this whole definition would like to be quite cumbersome. I would come down to it again later. And how the IEEE defines smart grid? It is considered as a large system of systems with three layers of functioning. One is the power and the energy layer. The other is the communication layer, and the third is the computation layer. Now, this is important. Whenever we talk of an electrical grid, of course, this component will be there. There will be a transfer of power and energy that is there in the classical grid, and it is present in the smart grid also, because without power and energy flow, we cannot have an electrical network. Right. Now, communication layer. Communication layer is something which I won't say that it was not there in the classical grid, but the extent of communication layers, or the extent of communication components that we use in a smart grid is much higher than the extent of communication that was there in the classical grid. So what are those communication protocols, and how that communication is brought about? What are the variables, or what are the sensor measurements which we would like to communicate in a smart grid, that I will discuss a bit. And then the third component is something which is solely confined to smart grid. You can say that it was not there in the classical grid to a great extent, and that is the IT and the computation layer. So naturally, when we have a large amount of data, we should have a proper algorithm to process that data. Because see, you have sensors, you are acquiring data from that sensors, but until and unless you have a proper algorithm to store the data and to come up with some concrete information regarding what is there in the data, that may not have like installing that large number of sensors, it does not make any sense. So just having sensors in the network just having sensors in the system, it is of no use until and unless you are able to properly utilize the data that is coming from the sensors. And for a massive grid like the power grid, where the number of sensors can go into thousands and lakhs, you should have a proper algorithm to store the data. You should have a proper database system, and at the same time you should have an algorithm to come up with some concrete information from the data, in the sense that you should be able to extract some discriminatory features from the data. I have a data. You run a signal processing algorithm or some other algorithm, say a statistical algorithm, and by that you are saying that this is the data that I have from a particular sensor for the past 1 month or past 1 year. And when I am analyzing this data, this is the information that I am coming up with, how that particular system and how that particular network has behaved in the last 1 month or in the last 1 year. And that is what the computation layer does. I will like to tell you is that over the last 10 years, the job of power engineers have changed a lot. I have students who are working in different power utilities like Power Grid Corporation, NTPC. Not NTPC is meant towards the generation side, mainly from Power Grid, and then from other private utilities like Adani Power and Tata Power. What those students they are telling is that, sir, over the last 1 year, our profile has changed to such an extent that now we are mainly dealing with things which has more to do with computer science and electronics communication rather than electrical engineering. Okay, so why that is happening? Because in recent times there is more and more of information technologies, there is more and more of communication technology, and there is more and more of computational sciences which is coming to electrical engineering. I won't say that the classical power grid or the classical power system that we have studied in our BTech, that has become obsolete. That can never become obsolete. But the thing is that with automation, now we have to integrate more of computers, more of servers, more of database managements, these things into the classical grid. So a good electrical engineer at this point of time, a good power engineer is something which is who is having some sort of knowledge with both regarded to communication as well as to IT and computation. Because you cannot have automation, you cannot have smartness until and unless you have proper communication channels, you have proper communication protocols, and at the same time you don't have proper servers, you don't have proper databases, and you don't have proper algorithms. This thing will always be there. Power and energy that flow, power generation, power energy consumption, these things always will there. But to make it more smart, to increase the extent of automation, you need to have knowledge regarding communication and computation. Okay, so this is what a smart grid does. It integrates a large amount of communication and computation with the existing physical network. The physical network, I mean that here I am physical, I am talking of the things that you can see. You can see a generator, you can see a transformer, you can see a transmission line. So those are the physical components, but there are certain cyber components which you cannot see, but they are actually more responsible, I will say, for making the grid more smart and for making the grid more automated. Okay, so this is what a smart grid is all about. And the basic requirement is that a smart grid is an electrical grid which makes extensive use of ICT, that is information and communication technology, IoT, Internet of Things, and most important, sensor technologies. Okay, so I would mainly deal with this aspect. What are the smart sensors? Why those smart sensors are required? And previously, when we did not have those smart sensors, now when we have those smart sensors, how has the monitoring improved because of those smart sensors? That I will discuss mainly. And then somewhere I would come down to this information communication technology and Internet of Things also. Vijay madam, if there is loss of connectivity, you please give me a call, because I may not be able to understand it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, please continue.
Okay. And please ask questions. Okay, that would motivate me, and that I would make the session more interactive. Again and again, I am telling, please ask questions. Right. So now the question is, do actually we need smart sensors? Smart sensors are actually required or not? This is an important thing, because in a country like India, whenever you go for something big, whenever you want to increase the extent of automation, the one question that will ultimately come is the finance. Okay. Naturally, when we go for more automation, there will be huge investment. The same holds for smart sensors also. If you have to replace the classical sensors by smart sensors, there will be huge investment. Whether there will be a return on that investment, whether that financial investment that we are making, is it viable? Will we get something in return? So that is an important question which everybody should understand, that why we should go from classical sensors to smart sensors. So if you look at the evolution of power networks or power grids, what has happened is that throughout the world, whenever there is a catastrophe and whenever there is a blackout or whenever there is an hazard, the power engineers and the utilities and the government, at that point of time, they think that why this blackout has happened. I suppose all of you understand what is the meaning of a power blackout. So in a simple sense, it is like, if you have a power blackout, then there is a substantial amount of consumers who are without power for a substantial interval of time. Okay. So what has happened over the years is that after every 30 or 40 years, we have a blackout, and after the blackout, there is a huge financial loss, and then people try to come up with something so that such type of blackouts are not repeated in future. So here I have mentioned the three important blackouts which has actually led to the change in the way we monitor the power network. The first important blackout was the 1965 Great Northeast Blackout. So it was a blackout which happened in the northern part of America and to some extent in Canada also, and in the year 1965. And what happened was that there were about 3 crore people who were affected by it. Okay. And they were without power for a period of about, I think, 16 hours. So 3 crore people for a country like US is quite high. So at that point of time, it constituted to close to 1/5 of the total population of the, not 1/5, sorry, 1/7 of the total population of the entire country. So you can imagine, if 1/7 of the total population of the country is without power for a period of about what you call 15-20 hours, then how much will be the damage? So what happened in that blackout is that at that point of time, people were mainly using analog sensors. Okay, people were mainly using analog sensors. See, calling a sensor to be an analog sensor is not a proper way of mentioning. There is nothing like an analog sensor or a digital sensor, because when you talk of electrical networks, the signals that you acquire will always be analog. Okay, the current and the voltage signals that you will acquire, they will always be a continuous analog signals. So all signal sensors and analog sensors in the sense, but there are certain digital sensors. What they do is that they process that particular continuous signal and convert them into digital form. So as such, sensors are analog sensors only, but the processing that is done, whether it is analog or whether it is digital, that is a different domain. So what happened in 1965 is that at that point of time, the utilities were mainly processing the sensors in continuous domain. That is, they were doing not digital signal processing has not started at that point of time. They were mainly analyzing the sensors, sorry, the data from the sensors in analog form only. And it so happened that at that point of time, microprocessor has come, but it has not evolved to a great extent. So it was in the month of November, and a large amount of population they were using, and it was quite cold in 1965. And what happened that people were using heaters to a very large extent, and there was a particular line which got overloaded. Right. So what happened when that line got overloaded? There was a particular relay which was attached to that line, and that relay was programmed in such a manner. So when the line is having a load greater than a certain value, it was programmed to trip. So naturally, the line tripped because the line was overloaded. So can you tell me that when in a power network, when a particular line, suppose you have a generating station here, right, and you have some load which is here, okay, so it may be that you have a connection like this, then there may be a certain load which may be like this, okay, and I call it L1, I call it L2, and this may be covering some another load L3, and you have something like this. Okay, So initially, this you have a switch here. Okay, you have a switch here. You have a switch here. You have a switch here. So suppose this switch is just a minute. I don't know why I'm not. Yeah. This switch is closed. This switch is closed. This switch is closed. This switch is open. So L3 is this load L3 is receiving power through this line. Sorry, this is L2. L2 is receiving power through this line, and L1 and L3 are receiving power through this line. Okay. Now suppose this line gets overloaded. Which line? This particular line which connects the generator to L1, it's get overloaded, and what happens is that there is a relay which trips. There is a relay which relay trips. Just a minute. Which relay trips? Suppose there is a relay which trips and it opens this switch. Why? Because this line was overloaded. Now there was a relay which was programmed to an extent that whenever the overloading in the line it got increased, then it tripped the line. Okay. So now L1 and L3 are without power. L2 is receiving power. Now what that the persons who are sitting in the control center, now what they did was that they now closed this switch. Okay, right. So they closed this switch and now L1 was receiving power through this line. So this is something which is very common in the reconfiguration in power networks. It happens always. The same happened on that dreadful day in 1965. So now previously this line was loaded, it was tripped. Now naturally this line now will get overloaded. Okay, this particular line will get overloaded. So naturally again what happened? The relay, this relay tripped or this switch tripped. So now after that, after some time, this line tripped. This line also tripped after some point of time. So now L1, L2, L3 were without power. So this is a cascading effect which went on for about an hour. So slowly and slowly, 1/7 of the entire population of US was without what you call power. Now, what has led to this particular what you call this blackout? The main reason was that the relay setting were not proper. Okay, right. Relay setting was not proper. Can anybody of you tell me what is the basic difference between an analog relay and a digital relay? Yes, anybody can come forward and answer this question. Or you can also tell me the difference in between an analog controller and a digital controller. In what way a digital controller is better than an analog controller? Yes, please.
Digital is based on 0 1s data.
Okay.
And analog is based on 0 to 10 volt or milliampere, anything.
Okay. Okay, fine. So what you are talking about is that
analog means, excuse me, sir. Analog means continuous. Continuous. We are getting signals in continuous way.
Okay. 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 See, as I have told you, the signals will always be continuous. There is no way you can get a you have a sinusoidal waveform like this. It will always be continuous, right? So now you have a relay here. This relay is nothing but a processor, or you can say as a controller. We can directly feed this signal to the relay. Now, as two of you have told you, what we can do is that we can use an analog to digital converter, and then you can feed this signal to the relay. Okay, right. So in one way, you are directly feeding the naturally when you convert this analog to digital signal, you will not get a continuous signal, but you will get something like this. Okay, the discrete samples like 0 and 1 or something like that. Okay, so sending this signal directly to the relay and converting this signal into 0 1s and sending it to the relay or to the processor or to the controller, which of the two is better? Yes, anybody?
Digital is better, sir.
Now I'd like to Digital is better. Why? Why digital is better?
Because analog has interference, but digital doesn't have.
Yes, yes, that is one thing. Because yeah, naturally an analog signal will be the impact of noise and other waves on that signal will be more. That is one reason analog signal. See, right now I'm not talking of analog signal and digital signal. I'm talking of processing of analog signal and processing of digital signal. Okay. If you want to process an analog signal, you can directly process it. But when you have to process a digital signal, you have to convert it into a digital signal and then you have to process it. Right. So you are having an extra component when you are processing a digital signal, which is an analog to digital converter. But still, 99% of the cases we are processing a signal through by converting it into a digital signal and by using an extra component, which is an analog to digital converter. In what way processing a digital signal is better than processing an analog signal? One reason is what some of you have told, that the impact of interference. But what is the main, what you call, advantage of a digital processor as compared to an analog processor? So in 1965, before this blackout happened, they were processing and the current and the voltage signals using some analog relays. Right. Now, the problem with analog relay or with an analog processor is that any analog processor is mainly made up of the three basic components in electrical circuit, that is R, L, and C. Right. And there are certain mechanical components also. Whereas a digital relay, you mainly have a code, that is a program, and you have a processor. So if you have to change the settings of the analog relay, what you have to do is that, or an analog controller, what you have to do is that you have to change the values of resistor, inductor, capacitor, or for that, whatever the mechanical components that you have if you have an electromechanical relay. So that is quite difficult in the sense that you have to replace the what you call relay or the controller by a new relay or controller. Whereas in the case of a digital controller or a digital relay, what you have to do is that you have to just go to the program and change the settings of that program. Okay, so reconfiguration of a relay is much easier with digital domain as compared to processing the signal in analog domain. And that in this blackout, what happened is that they had not, the setting of the relays were not proper. The setting of the relay were not proper because whenever there is a change in the configuration of the system, the relay setting should change. And changing the relay setting is much difficult in an analog relay as compared to a digital relay. Okay. So then after that blackout, just like any other blackout or for that any other hazard, there was a committee which was set up, and that committee came up with a conclusion is that we should move towards digital processing of the analog signals, and that actually led to the evolution of SCADA. Can anybody tell me what anybody has heard of this term SCADA? Because this is something which I would be now very frequently using. Can anybody come forward and answer what you understand by SCADA? Yes, please.
Representation.
Yes, please. Yes, you're right. Yes.
Graphical representation of a system.
Okay, is it only graphical representation? Because there are many other ways by which you can achieve graphical representation. For that, you don't have to use such a costly device called a SCADA. Okay, I will be coming down to it. Actually stands for supervisory control and data acquisition. So I'm talking of monitoring and control. How you can control a particular system? Only if you can monitor it properly. Right. So it's like, for monitoring, you have instrumentation, you have sensors, okay, and for control, you have relays, you have switches, or you have controllers. So now the SCADA is something which comprises of both. It has got sense that it is taking information from the sensors, then it is processing that information, and then finally it is providing you an output which leads to the switching of relays and switching of controllers. Right. So like previously we have seen in this particular example that why this particular load was without power, because of the switching action. And why this blackout happened? because some of the switches or some of the lines got tripped, which should not have been tripped. So we need a better way of controlling, and controlling cannot be better until and unless you are monitoring the system in a better manner. And what is the best way of monitoring and control? The committee that came up with a conclusion is that we are previously monitoring and controlling analog domain. So why not go to the digital domain? Digital domain has its own advantages like interference, like better reconfigurability and things like that. So after 1965, there was a shift from this processing of signals in analog domain to processing of signals in digital domain, and that led to the evolution of SCADA. So everything went well with SCADA, right? Then in 2003, there was another blackout in New York. And in that blackout, what happened is that because of the voltage instability, now voltage instability will come when there is a mismatch in between the power that is generated and the power that is consumed. If there is a huge mismatch in between the two, then of course, SCADA was there. When this 2003 blackout happened, still the processing of the signals was carrying out in digital domain. Prior to 2003, people thought that there won't be any further blackout because now we are monitoring the system better and now we are controlling the system in a better manner. So in 2003, even with digital processing and even with SCADA, there was this blackout. And then what was the reason? The reason was this particular thing. Though the processing was carried out in digital domain, but it was not real-time monitoring. It was not in real time. We are not acquiring the signals from the sensors. Can you tell me what is the meaning of real time? The opposite of that is offline, if you can say. To a certain extent, the opposite of real time is offline. So when you have a sensor, I say that the sensor is acquiring the signals in real time. What does it mean? What is the meaning of this word real time? This real time monitoring was not there in SCADA. Okay. Okay. Now, okay, I will give you an example. Suppose you have a sensor. I call it V. I call it T. Suppose you have a sensor which is supposed to monitor this particular signal, right? So naturally, this is a continuous signal. So what that sensor is doing is that it is monitoring the signals after a certain interval of time. Okay, or it is acquiring this signal after a certain interval of time, and that interval of time is half cycle. So initially it extracts a signal here, and then it extracts a signal here, and then it extracts a signal here. Try to understand this. A sensor has to acquire this signal. It has to measure this signal. But the sensor is not measuring the signal continuously. It is measuring the signal at discrete intervals. So what it does is that it measures the signal when it is 0, if capital T is the time period. Then it measures the signal when it is T/2, time is T/2, and then it measures the signal again when it has completed one cycle. So finally, from the sensor, what is the information that you will get? You will get information regarding these three values. Are you able to understand it? So if you don't have access to this signal, you have access to these three values of that signal only, because you have installed a sensor which is able to acquire only these three values. Right. So with these three values, are you getting a proper picture regarding the signal? Yes or no? Yes. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
So with these three signals, are you able to get a proper picture regarding the sinusoidal waveform? Yes or no?
No.
No. You might think that you have a signal which is always 0. So what should be done? Yes, any idea what should be done? So naturally, we should try to acquire signals at lesser intervals. So let us now say that along with t by 2, I also acquire the signal at t by 4 and 3t by 4. So now I acquire signal at t equal to 0, at t by 4, t by 2, 3t by 4 and capital T. So now previously I was having 3 values, 3 discrete values. Now I am having 5 discrete values. Okay, right. So which of the two is better, the previous one or this one? Which will be better in the sense that which sensors provide me a better information regarding the signal, the previous one or this one?
This one.
This one. Okay, right. Now if I further reduce the time instant or the sampling time between two successive samples, I will acquire some more samples. Say like previously we did it at t by 2, then we did it at t by 4, now we are doing it at t by 8. Now this gives an even better picture. Okay, so the real-time monitoring is that monitoring in which you acquire the signal the way it is coming to the sensor. You don't have a sufficient time lag in between two measurements. So this is close to real time. Okay, so real time means that real in time. Real in time means that as the time at which you are measuring the signal, that time is the real time at which the signal is there in the original waveform. So you can think that real-time monitoring is that in which you try to acquire the signals at a lesser time interval. Okay, so what SCADA was there is that SCADA was a what you call, you were processing the signals in digital domain, but the problem was that the signal was coming at a very slow rate, in the sense that say from zero, maybe in between 0 to 5 seconds you are getting one signal. In between 0 to 5 seconds you are getting one signal. So then, but the power system dynamics are quite fast. You have one cycle which is completed in a 50 hertz system. One cycle is completed in 20 milliseconds, and in 1 second you can have 50 such cycles. Okay, right. And there is a change which can happen in microsecond or millisecond. So if you have a device which acquires data only after 5 seconds, then those disturbances which are happening in microseconds and milliseconds, then those information is not contained here. It is very much visible from the example that I have told you. So what you need to do is that you have to reduce this time interval for acquiring signals, and that is why we have people went for real-time monitoring, because there were certain disturbances which happened very fast and the SCADA was not able to monitor those information. So then people went for real-time monitoring. Has anybody any doubt on this? You please ask. And this sort of monitoring, that is from offline monitoring to real-time monitoring, is not only limited to power networks or power system. It is something which happens in almost all the systems. Whether you talk of wireless sensor networks, whether you talk of communication networks, whether you talk of mechanical systems, whether you talk of chemical plants, until and unless you are monitoring the system at a very faster rate, you are acquiring the data from the sensor at a very faster rate, you won't be able to get a clear picture about what is happening in the system or what is happening in the network. Anybody has any doubt regarding the main difference in between offline monitoring and real-time monitoring? Because naturally, when you are going for real-time monitoring, the sensors that you are require, that has to be more advanced as compared to the sensors that we use for offline monitoring. Okay, right. So what are those sensors by which, see, slowly and slowly what we are seeing, you need sensors which should provide an information which can be processed in digital domain. That was the first requirement which came after the first blackout. Then the second requirement is that you should have a sensors which should be able to acquire or capture signals at a very faster rate. Okay, and that rate may be in microsecond or that may be in millisecond. Okay, so slowly and slowly we are coming down to why we need smart sensors. We need smart sensors because we need to process the information from the sensors in digital domain, and we need smart sensors because we need to acquire signals at a very faster rate. And where this information is stored, this information is stored in the memory. So if you want to store the data at a very faster rate, naturally the memory that you need for that sensor will be quite high. So that is also a very important requirement of a smart sensor, that you should have a huge memory, because until and unless you have a huge memory, you cannot acquire the data in real time. Okay. So please, if anybody has any, how to call this, if anybody has any doubt, you please come forward and ask me.
Sir,
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, sir. It's
Yes.
Sudhindra asking the question.
Yes, please go ahead.
So I just want to, out of the thing that you are told, the interval.
Yes, please go ahead.
The interval of sampling, is it fixed or is that also variable?
See, you have asked a very good question. Now, just let me tell you. Now, the question is, to what extent in real time we should acquire the signal? Now, I have here this waveform and this waveform. Now, this waveform, if you can see, the value is changing at a very faster rate. So if you suppose this represents current and you want a sensor to capture the dynamics of this current signal, and you have another current signal like this, you need a sensor to capture the dynamics of this signal. So naturally, in which of the two cases the sampling should be high? Can you tell me? See, from here to here, there is no change in the signal. So if I take any sampling from here to here, so if I take only one reading here, I get this value. I take another reading here, I get this value. Okay. So here I can acquire the signal at a larger time interval because the signal is not changing rapidly. But in this case, the signal is changing rapidly. Hence, I should acquire the signal and I should process the signal at a very faster rate. See, when you have a temperature sensor is a sensor in which the variable does not change so rapidly. Temperature is not a quantity which changes very rapidly. You cannot have 40 degrees centigrade at some point of time, and it is not possible that immediately after 1 or 2 seconds that will come down to 30 degrees centigrade. So there you can use a processor which has a faster, where the samples are acquired at a larger time intervals. Okay. But then you talk of something like a current or voltage, where there is a possibility that it will change at a very fast rate. So you have to have a sensors which has a lesser sampling time. So it all depends on the variables that you are trying to acquire. Everybody is talking of smart sensors, but think logically. Is it always essential to go for smart sensor? Or there may be certain cases where a normal classical analog sensor can do your work. It is same with what you call your mobile phone. Like the previous phone that you had, which was not smart. If you are only interested in making call and receiving call, somebody don't want to use any other feature. In that case also, that person will invest so much of money to buy a new smartphone. The same holds for smart sensors also. The same holds for real-time sensors also. Real-time sensors always may not be required. There may be cases where even offline sensors will be able to do your job. Okay. So are you convinced, sir? Is your question answered?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to have a more clarity. Basically, the interval I'm talking about.
Yes, that is what I'm saying. Na? For this case, if your signal is changing very rapidly, then the interval should be very less. And if the signal is not changing very rapidly, you can take larger intervals. It all depends on which signal you are trying to acquire from that sensor. Okay, right?
Okay, sir. Got it, sir. Thank you. Thanks.
So now we have digital processing of signals, and now we have real-time monitoring of signal with SCADA. Then even with real-time monitoring, what happened in 2016, there was another blackout in South Australia. And now what happened is that when we go for more and more loads, now all of you know that there is more and more of renewable energy that is coming into the power networks, right? Now, previously, when the number of loads were limited, the number of generators were limited, there was not much of a problem. But now, when you have a large number of relays, when you have a large number of switches, now in this network, this is a very small network. This example that I had given you, it was a very small network in which there were 1, 2, 3, 4 switches were there. Okay. Now, in a big network, there may be thousands and lakhs of switches. Okay. So what happened in 2016, there was a blackout in Australia, and that blackout, see, in every blackout, the reason is same. There is a particular line which gets loaded. And now when that particular line gets loaded, the power network, it reconfigures itself. Then what happens is that the loads, that line gets stripped. Now that load is shared by other lines. Okay. Now, naturally, those lines also get overload. They also get disconnected, and then it goes through another line. And this is a cascading effect which happens. So the same happened in 2016 in South Australia also. Now, what was the cause of that blackout? The improper protection settings. Okay, the settings were not proper. See, the same thing happened in 1965 and the same thing happened in 2016. There also the improper relay setting, and here also protection setting means the setting of the relays only. Now you might think of why is that the same problem that people faced 40 years ago, why is that the same problem people faced later? The thing is that previously the network was quite concise in the sense that the number of generators were less, the number of sensors were less, loads were less. Now, with the increase in time, the power demand has increased, the number of generators has increased, the number of loads has increased. So naturally, you need more sensors to monitor the system. Okay. Now, those sensors were not properly transmitting data among themselves. Now, what do you think? Suppose you have a system where you have 100 sensors, right? So what do you think? Those sensors should exchange information among themselves, or those sensors should not exchange information among themselves? They should only extract the information and send it to the controller. So in a large network, like in a wireless sensor networks, the sensors, they acquire the data, locally they acquire the data, and then they send it to the controller. So is there a need to process the data so that the sensors, they talk among themselves, they exchange the data among themselves? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So naturally that would increase the productivity of the system. So what happened in 2016 is that there was a lack of global monitoring. Now this is important. One is local monitoring, one is global monitoring. As the name suggests, so if in a power network you have a large number of substations and each substation is having their own sensors. Okay. And then centrally you have a controller, and then you have a local controller. Within that substation, you have the local controller and the local sensors. And within the big network where you have a large number of substations, you have the global monitoring. So previously what happened in 2016 was that the monitoring was carried out locally. Locally it was carried out, it means that it was carried out at the substation level. It was not carried out centrally. Okay. So individual controllers, they were operating properly, but centrally they were not properly operating because there was not much of a coordination among the local controllers. So when you have a big system, you have to have local monitoring, and you should also have a global monitoring. Global monitoring means that for a very big power network, there will be one control room, and in that control room, the operator sitting in that control room is globally monitoring it. And how he or she is globally monitoring it? Through the local sensors that are there in the individual substations. So in 2016, this global monitoring was not there, and that actually led to the blackout. So slowly and slowly, when we are coming down after 1965, there was an evolution of digital sensors. 2003 there was digital sensors plus monitoring in real time, and then after 2016 we have digital sensors, we have monitoring in real time, as well as you should have global monitoring. Okay, so a sensor should not only acquire data, it should be able to transmit that data to the control centers, and it should be able to share information among the different sensors. So the different sensors in a very big network, they should be able to talk to each other. So how they can talk with each other? Only when you have a proper communication network among them. Okay, so this actually led to the evolution of smart sensors, which should have the capability of digital processing, we should have the capability of real-time acquiring signals, and which should have the capability of communicating with other smart sensors, right? So now we have talked about three blackouts which has happened in foreign countries. Now, how many of you are aware of this blackout which happened in our country? And I suppose some of you might have been affected by it. Anybody of you who are from UP or say Rajasthan or Bihar? So there was a blackout on 30th July. It was around 11 in the morning at around 10:30, and the almost the entire north and eastern part of the country was without power for a period of about 6 hours. Anybody wants to say something on it? You remember anything regarding it? Why it happened? Yes. Madam, is it like that many of the participants are not from electrical engineering?
No, they are of mixed type.
Mixed type.
Participants are from all the fields.
Okay.
Computer science, electronics.
Oh, you have people from computer science and electronics also. Okay, I will customize the
But
rest
there
of
are participants from electrical also.
Okay.
Instrumentation from electronics and instrument.
Okay, electronics and instrumentation. Okay, I'll try to customize the presentation accordingly. But anyway, yeah. Anybody wants to say something on it?
Sir, one doubt is.
Please go
Hello.
ahead. Yes, please go ahead.
This is Mayank. Sir, what is the meaning for distributed sensor for protection and monitoring? Distributed sensors.
Okay. You have a centralized controller, and then you have a distributed sensor or controller. Okay. No. Yeah, this is a very simple diagram, which I suppose the non-electrical people also will be able to understand. So you have two generators at two ends of the line, and then you have two loads which are connected like this. Okay, there is a substation here. I suppose all of you know what is a substation. Okay. Now, as I have told you, there is a control center somewhere here. Control center means the operator at the control system, at the control center, is monitoring the overall system, and whenever there is a disturbance, whenever there is a fault, it takes some proper troubleshooting measure. Okay. Now you have talk of distributed sensor or distributed controller. So previously I had talked of a local sensor. Local sensor means you have a substation here. That substation is having some sensors which is monitoring the current and the voltage at this point, at this particular bus. We call it as a bus. And then you have another substation, and you might have a sensor which is monitoring the control and which is monitoring the voltage and the current signals at this particular bus. Bus means, you don't get confused, it is a point at which you measure the signal, because ultimately you have to install the sensor somewhere. So these two are the local sensors or the sensors which are distributed across the network. Local sensors are distributed sensor. Why they are called distributed? Because they are not concentrated at a particular place. They are distributed along the entire length and breadth of the network. So you have a distributed sensor here, you have a distributed sensor here. The information from this distributed sensor goes to the central controller, and the information from this distributed sensor also goes to the central controller here. Okay. Now your sensors are distributed throughout the network. You can have a distributed controller also, a local controller here, which will take care of the switching action for this particular bus only, which will take, you can have a distributed controller here also, a local controller here also, which will take care of the control action at this bus only. And then you have a control center. In that control center, you have a centralized controller. Centralized, I have told you that you need global monitoring. Global monitoring means what? All the local sensors or the distributed sensors, combining all of them leads to a sorry, leads to a global controller. Okay. So when you have sensors which are distributed throughout the network, not localized at a particular position, they are called distributed sensors or they are called local sensors. And what is the use of that distributed sensors? Ultimately, all of those distributed sensors, their information are acquired at the control center, and then the final control action is being carried out. So you have individual sensors or distributed or local sensors here, local sensors, local controllers here, and all those local sensors combined together have a centralized control action taking place at a far away place in the control center. Okay, is it clear?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Oh. Okay. So now, see, since not most of you are from electrical, so I would not go much into this. See, what I want to tell you is that it is not only for electrical networks or for power systems only that the until and unless, see, wherever there is a need, there is a way. Okay. That whatever the advancement that has taken place in sensors, it has only happened because some problem has happened, and after that people thought that the way that we were monitoring the system, the way that we are controlling the system, that the way that we were processing the system, not processing the system, we are processing the signals from the sensors were not proper. So that actually led to the evolution of sensors. Now the same thing happened in India also. There was a blackout in 2012. The reason was almost similar. It was a summer day, and there was a you know that the entire country is divided into certain grids. So you have the north grid, you have the western grid, you have the southern grid, you have the eastern grid, you have the northeastern grid, like that. Okay. So on that particular day, there were Uttar Pradesh was consuming more amount of power than for what it was allocated to. Okay. So the same thing happened. There was a particular line which got overloaded. That line tripped, and there was a line from Gwalior in Madhya Pradesh to Agra in UP. Okay, this line got overloaded. Naturally, when this line got overloaded, there was a relay which tripped, and this line was not disconnected. Now, Uttar Pradesh was receiving power through a different line, through the eastern grid. Now again, it got overloaded, it got tripped, and things like that. So the reason that was given for this particular blackout is that the coordination among the different grids, okay, the northern grid, the western grid, and the eastern grid was not proper, right? So why this coordination was not proper? Again, the monitoring and the control was not to the extent that which was desired for a big country like India. So that people thinking about making the grids. You not only have to have the individual controllers which should be strong, but the centralized controller also need to be strong. So you should have strong controllers, local controllers. By local here I mean the controller for each individual grid. And then you should have a centralized controller which should centrally operate the individual local controllers. Okay, right. So since that was not strong, that actually led to the particular blackout. So if the controllers are not operating properly, one may be because of the controller settings are not proper, and one may be the controller is not able to get a proper picture regarding the working of the power network. Okay, it is like that. The controller may not be able to get a proper picture regarding the working of the power network. Why it is not getting a proper picture regarding the working of the power network? Naturally, the sensors are not playing the role properly. So again, there is a need to increase smartness in the network, and naturally, we should go from a conventional grid to a smart grid. Okay, so this is how the evolution of smart grid has come. Now, with the background that I have given you, one thing is for sure that you are now convinced that if you have to go for more automation, if you have to go for more productivity, there is a need to increase the level of automation, and for that we have to use smart sensors, and for that we have to use proper communication channels. Why communication channels are required? Because until and unless you don't have communication channels, you cannot have a global monitoring. Okay, so for global monitoring, communication channels are required. You need to have proper communication protocols, you need to have proper sensor networks, and above all, you need to have smart sensors. So now I think you people are motivated enough to have an idea regarding what are the smart sensors. Because see, whenever you study a new thing, you should convince yourself that whether this particular technology is required or not. Yes, anybody has any question, please? Okay. So you should yes. Yeah. So you should convince yourself that whether we should go from classical sensors to smart sensors or not. Right. So now I think you are pretty convinced that if you don't have smart sensors, and if you had smart sensors previously, then to some extent we would have avoided the blackouts that we have discussed, the 4 blackouts that we have discussed. Not only smart networks, sorry, smart sensors, but smartness in every component, whether you talk of sensing, whether you talk of controlling, whether you talk of monitoring. Right. Now, since I think that not all of you are from electrical engineering, I won't go too much into this. One particular, these are some of the aspects which distinguishes a smart grid from a classical grid. Okay, in a classical grid, as you understand that you have a generating station. From that generating station, you have a flow of energy from the generator to your house, to the load. So this flow of energy is unidirectional, isn't it? That the generation is always at the central level and at the generating station, and then it goes through the transmission and distribution network, and finally it reaches your residential complex. Okay, but in smart grid you have a two-way flow of electricity. Why this? You have a two-way flow of electricity in the sense that the flow of power or the flow of energy can be from the generating station to your house, and in the reverse direction also, that you can produce electricity and send it back to the grid. How is it possible? How is it possible? Yes, anybody? In the conventional grid that we understand, the flow of electricity is bidirectional. It is always from the generating station to the load. Okay, but with the evolution of time, we had the smart grid, and the smart grid, it is possible that you also can generate electricity, and the easiest way to generate electricity is that you can install PV panels in your house, and when you have enough power, you should be able to send the power back to the grid, and by that you would be earning some incentive. Your that is your electricity bill will come down a lot. So everything looks good. That is the bidirectional flow of electricity, both in this direction as well as in this direction. Now, what has sensors to do with this two-way flow of electricity? How can sensors help in the two-way flow of electricity? Without proper sensors, is it possible to have the two-way flow of electricity? Suppose the amount of power that is generated by the generating station is Pg, and the amount of power that is required by you is PL. So as long as PG is greater than PL, what will be the flow of electricity? Of course, from the generating station to the what you call to the load. Now suppose I have installed some PV panels in my house. Now the power that I am generating through the power panels is, now PL is my power that is required. PG is greater than PL. So the flow of power is from the generating station to the load. Now what I am doing is that I have installed some PV panels. Now through these PV panels, I am generating a power PPV. Okay. Now this PPV is the power that I am generating is greater than PL. See, just follow it very carefully. Some power is generated by the generating station, which is PG. My power requirement is PL, but I am generating power through the solar panels, which is installed in the rooftop, and that PV power is greater than PL. So what I can do is that I don't have to rely on the power that I am getting from the generating station, because the power that I am generating is enough to meet my load requirement. Okay, so I won't be taking power from the generating station. Through the PV panels, I would be getting power. But even after that, PPV minus PL is the excess power that will be left with me. Yes or no? Are you able to follow it?
Yes, sir.
So what can I do with this excess power? I will waste it, or I will do something constructive with it. So in that case, what I can do is that I can send this power back to the grid so that it may be used by somebody else. Okay, so this is how the bidirectional flow of electricity is brought about, and it has mainly happened because of these renewable energy resources and because of the storage devices like batteries and all that. Now everything looks very good, but here can you tell me what has sensors to do with this two-directional flow of electricity, or without sensors? Without sensors, is it possible to have this two-directional flow of electricity? Without sensors, it is not possible, because you need a sensor to determine what is your present load requirement. You need a sensor to determine what is the power that is generated by the PV. You should have a sensor which should, not a sensor, but a communication system. We should know what is the present generating capacity of the load of the power plant. Okay. So sensors have a huge role to play here. Until and unless you have a proper sensor, this two-way flow of electricity is not possible. And information using sensors and ICT. Now, what is this information? This information is nothing but the data about the power requirement of the different loads and the data of the power requirement of the various generating stations at the various buses and the substations, right? So I don't have to go between, not going too much deep into this. The conventional grids and the smart grid, these are the basic differences in between the conventional grid and the smart grid. You have more of digital devices coming in the smart grid, whereas you have these.
Sir, actually, I am telling the net metering is of 3-phase or single phase.
Net metering. Yeah, see.
For the PV panel.
Net metering is for 3V. I have came across some installations in the state of Chhattisgarh, where then they are using net metering for both single phase as well as 3-phase.
Sir, but in net if you are giving single phase, then the phase, the line voltage would not change.
Line voltage would not change. Yes, you are absolutely right. Okay. Yeah.
Is there no problem with the line voltage?
Yes. You're absolutely right that basically it was devised for 3-phase only. But when we go for the single phase net metering, that because of this line voltage is not changing. So I have looked it more closely. I also had the same doubt. Now, what those persons who have installed it, there was this Chhattisgarh Renewable Energy Development Agency. What they are telling is that finally you have a processor in your meter. Okay. and you have a certain program that is written there in the processor in the meter. Okay, so they are taking those signals and whatever the changes that multiplied by root 3 or divided by root 3, that they are doing in that particular program, and finally you are getting the output. You are able to
Please
understand?
mute actually. I cannot listen.
Okay, okay. Just I am unmuted, I suppose. Can you hear me, Srijit?
Actually, I didn't listen, sir.
Okay.
Actually, the interference was more.
Okay,
Can
okay.
you
Now you
repeat
can
once
hear me?
again?
Now you can hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Srijit, what I had the same doubt, and I had asked the people here at Chhattisgarh Renewable Energy Development Authority. Initially, net metering was there for 3-phase only. Now, in certain cases, they are doing it for single phase, like whatever the root 3 and thing that you are talking of, the 3-phase to single phase conversion. Finally, that signal is going to a processor, and in that processor, you have a program that is written.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so whatever the changes that are addition by root 3 and division by root 3, they are doing it in the program itself.
Okay.
So you can say that they have reconfigured itself by scaling the values.
Sir, they have phase analyzer or what?
No, not phase analyzer. You can think of as digital processor, not exactly phase analyzer. But yeah, the concept is same. Now, see, that is what I am saying, that if you think in terms of this 3-phase single phase net metering, the doubt that you have is very pertinent in the sense that until and unless we do some conditioning, we do some processing on the signal, we cannot manipulate the signal, or we cannot increase the productivity of that device. But when you have a processor, you can add something to it, you can multiply something to it, you can divide something to it. So in that case, what you can say is that the applicability of that particular devices increases a lot. That is happening hot to a net meter. Now it is applicable equally to a single phase system as well as to a 3-phase system. Are you able to get it? Why it has happened? It is because of the program that is there in the processor. Okay.
Sir, actually, this processors maintains IE rules. Because they have every processor has got harmonics. So harmonics also gets implemented on the grid. So they maintain the IE rule. Actually,
see. Yeah. So your question is every.
Are they maintaining the IE rules?
Yes. The thing is that just if I am making some change in the processor, I am adding an extra module to it. In the computation layer. Okay. As such as physical signals are concerned, there is no change that is happening to it. It is just I am doing an extra computation on it. So if I am using a sensor, this meter or a sensor, I am adding something in the computation layer, not in the physical layer, something in the computation layer. Now from where the harmonics will come? The harmonics will come from non-linear devices. It will come from power or from switches. So when I am adding a module in the computation layer without doing anything in the physical layer, okay. So whatever the harmonics, then the power quality disturbances that are not getting affected as such.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. I get it. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Right. So, and then in the smart grid, we have a two-way communication, and this is what I have told you. This is important. We have fewer sensors in the conventional grid, whereas in a smart grid, we have sensors which are spread throughout the network. Okay. We have more number of sensors in a smart grid. Naturally, if your monitoring and control has to be good, you have to have more of monitoring. You have to have more of data. You have to have more of processors. You have to have more of communication channels. Okay. So you have sensors throughout the network. The number of sensors in a smart grid are much higher as compared to the sensors that we have in case of a conventional grid. Now it is having some adaptive characteristics like self-monitoring, self-healing, in the sense that even the conventional grid has some monitoring and healing in the, like we have seen that when a particular line gets disrupted, the load get power from some other line. Okay. And then getting power from some other line is more, the options for getting power in case of a fault or disturbance, that option is more in case of a smart grid as compared to a conventional grid. And then these things I will not go much into this. Yeah, now this is what I was talking of. I have talked of a cyber physical system. I have talked of a smart grid as a cyber physical system. I am coming down to it later. Now this is the power system layer, or this I will say that this is the physical layer. This physical layer is something which the electrical engineers are most concerned with. And this is the communication layer, in which what you call the communication people or the computer science people are more concerned with. Okay, so in the physical layer, what we have the generating stations, we have the substations, we have the what you call the transformers, and then we have the consumers. Means okay. And in the communication layer, what we have sensors on each and every point. Here we have a sensor. Here we have a sensor. We have a sensor here. Here we have a sensor. Here we have a sensor, and here we have a sensor. Okay, and here what they are doing is that at all these substations, the sensors are being acquired. The sensors are acquiring the data. They are communicating it among themselves, and then they are finally sending it to the control center through a communication channel. Okay, and what are the communication protocols and what are the networkings that are there, that I am coming down to a later stage at this point of time. But at this now, you appreciate only this point, that you not only have these physical electrical components, but you have a large number of non-electrical components also, like you have sensors, you have communication channels, you have protocols, you have servers, you have databases. Now databases is a very important requirement in case of a smart grid. This particular power network is spread across 100 kilometers, and there may be thousands and lakhs of sensors. Each of them are acquiring data in a fraction of milliseconds and microseconds. Then you can think of what is the extent of data that we are talking of. Many of you might have heard of this term in like those of you who are doing research. Now big data. Now big data is a research area which has recently come up, and this big data is a very big problem in power networks, because with increased number of sensors and they are sampling data in every microsecond. Okay, so every microsecond means that you have in 1 second I will get 1 into 10 to the power of 6 samples of data, and that is with one sensor. And if I have 1,000 such sensors, then it will be multiplied by 10 to the power of 3. Then I should be able to store this much amount of data. Okay, so I should have a proper database system. Now, if I ask you to come up with some concrete information from this data, just acquiring data does not make any significance to the monitoring process. If you want to monitor the system properly, you should come up with some concrete information from this huge amount of data. Okay, so for that you should have a proper algorithm. So now you can think that why this computation, why algorithms, why database, why servers are such an important component of the present day power network. Okay, if you have any doubt, you please ask. Now I am coming down to the exact sensors that are there in the power network, and one is this advanced metering infrastructure, and it is a two-way communication process between the smart utility meter and the utility company. I think these are pure theoretical stuffs. Okay, I am not going too much into it. So advanced metering infrastructure, it is the whatever the metering infrastructure that you presently have. Acha, by the way, I want to ask you a very simple question. Many of you might be having digital meters in your home, and about 10-20 years back, the type of meters were quite bulky. I think you might have seen both the previous meters and the new meters that you have in your home. Now, manipulating which of the two is more easier, the previous mechanical meters or the present digital meters? Can anybody come forward and answer this question? It has nothing to do with electrical engineering, okay, or for that matter any branch of engineering. Manipulating, I think that you should never try for it, but manipulating the previous mechanical meters were more easier, or manipulating the present digital meters are more easier? Yes,
Mechanical meters are more easier, sir.
More easier. Anybody thinks that digital meters is easier?
No, sir.
No, not at all. Okay.
Not at all.
Now suppose somebody hacks your meter. In that
can be done. Resistance can be added.
Yeah, I'm coming to it. Somebody hacks your meter. Then what will happen? If somebody is able to hack your meter, then in that case, the extent of manipulation that can be done will be more for a digital meter, or it will be more for a mechanical meter?
If it is hacked, means it is digital meter is more, sir.
More. Okay. Now, going for digitization, going for automation has its advantages always.
Sir,
okay.
Sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, I have a doubt. How can the power meter, energy meter be hacked as it is not provided with internet?
Yes, I'm coming down to it. Is not provided with internet.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to study energy meters to answer.
Yeah. See, you're absolutely right. But in a smart grid paradigm, I have talked of two-way transfer of energy. It may be from the load and it may be from the generating station also. Okay. So you have a communication channel, you have a power channel. Power channel is the channel in which the power is transferred, and then you have a communication channel in which the data is transferred. Okay. In the classical grid, as you have said, your meter is not getting connected to any communication network, or it is not getting connected to the cloud. It is not getting connected to the, to the internet. But in a smart grid, where you have two-way flow of information, your data is, you are continuously having the data of how much electricity is being produced by the generating station, and the generating station also has an information about how much power you are consuming. It happens in smart grid, not in the classical grid. So in a smart grid, you have a communication network in between the generators and the load, that is the consumer. Okay. So in that case, the communication channel is there, and that communication channel, if it is vulnerable, then a hacker will be able to have a control on that particular communication channel. And that actually results in cyber attacks that I will come down to after a certain point of time. But yes, if you are not connecting your meter to either any network, to any communication channel, to the cloud, or that that problem is not there. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now the question is, should you be going for that communication channel? Should you be passing your information to the to the generator, or just for the fear of your this your smart meter getting hacked, you should not share your you should not share your information with the generating station? Which of the two will you go out for? Tell me. Yes, please.
Sir, didn't get you.
My question is, just a minute. My question is that you are going for automation. So the first step was towards automation was smart meters. The next step for automation towards smart grid was transmitting your data to the generating station. So for that you need a communication channel. But while doing that, you are making your smart meter more vulnerable to an attack, more vulnerable of it getting hacked by an intruder or a hacker. Yes or no?
Yes, sir, it is possible.
It is possible. So what should you do? You won't go for smart grid for the fear of cyber attack, or for the fear of getting your information shared by an hacker?
So some of the fear will be there, sir. If you go for the smart grid,
okay. So yeah, both advantages and disadvantages are there.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it? But how you can avoid it? You people are still using internet banking. You people are still using mobile banking, even with the knowledge that there is a possibility that somebody might that without my knowledge somebody will take out money from my account. But still you are using it. Why? because you know that you are following certain corrective measures. You are knowledgeable that what are the possible ways by which a hacker may be able to get control of my account. The same is with the help is in the case of any smart grid structure. Okay, a smart grid structure should take into account the possibility of cyber attack, but then it should have a mechanism to avoid such attack, or it should have a mechanism to detect such attack. So counter, just because there is a possibility of an attack, we cannot go away from automation. We cannot go away from smartness. We should go for smartness. We should go for automation, while keeping in mind that there is a possibility of attack, and we should have proper resistive mechanism to avoid such type of attack. Okay, is it clear? Yes, please.
Yes, sir, it's clear.
Okay, see, I am not going into the exact electrical functioning of those smart sensors that we have in a smart grid. These are smart meters, okay, and you have intelligent electronic devices. These are basically microprocessor based devices. Okay, microprocessor based devices, it means that they have a memory, they have a program, they acquire the data, they process the data, convert it into a digital form, and then they pass that data through the communication network. I'm not going into this. I would have loved to discuss about phase measurement unit. Just one thing I would like to know from you, especially the electrical people, when you have a sinusoidal quantity, okay, suppose I have two sinusoidal quantities, you measure or you represent that sinusoidal quantity generally by its magnitude, and most of the times we don't consider the information regarding the phase of the electrical quantity. Can anybody tell me, if you have a sensor which gives you information not only regarding the magnitude but also regarding the phase, will it be helpful to you or not? Yes,
yes,
anybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Why? It's very needful.
Very needful. Why? Can you tell me? You're absolutely right. Why?
Because the current and voltage both are important, and frequency also is important. Exactly. If you change it, the load will change also. Yeah, your consumption will be less, but your bill will be much more higher.
Okay. Okay.
And so, we can easily do the frequency response analysis, and we can estimate the stability of the system.
Exactly.
Phase is also known.
Exactly. Very good. So I'm sorry I could not give much time on it. So if you have, I don't know how many of you, this is G1, this is G2, the power flow between this, you have a bus here V1, you have a bus here V2, this is at phi 1, this is at phi 2, V1, V2, phi x. I think this formula, I suppose all of you have came across at some point of time. So the power transfer in between two particular buses, it depends on this angle phi. Right. So naturally, when there is a disturbance in the system, there is a change in the power flow. What are the components that will be affected? V1 will be affected, V2 will be affected, X is fixed, that is the reactance of the line, and this phi will also get affected, the phase shift in between the two. So if you are analyzing
Sir, I have one more doubt in this smart grid system. So are they still using conventional controls, or they are using module specific model predictive controllers or something like that? So how far they are used for controlling model predictive control?
Okay. See, model predictive control, robust control, this what you call the sliding mode control and all that. Especially I can tell you about model predictive control, it is very, very computationally intensive. Okay. I have
So,
not come up.
But we can save the computation. We can bear it by using high-end systems. We have many advanced systems.
Exactly. Yeah. See, to what extent? Again, the question of to what extent you can go for high-end workstation, high-end servers, and high-end computational devices, whether they are actually required or not. Okay. Smart grids in the present case, I have specifically gone through a paper on smart grid where they have mentioned in that most of the pilot projects on smart grid in India, they are still using the conventional PID controller. Okay. Right. Okay. There is a possibility of using model predictive control, but again, as I have said, the problem of model predictive control, it is very computationally intensive. You need a high memory for implementing that particular control algorithm.
Okay. So what would you suggest whether to do research with the conventional controllers or model predictive controller?
See, now the question comes, the first question that you had asked me, that whether in practice in these projects on smart grid, whether you are using model predictive control or not. I have answered that question, that in practice still 95% of the cases you are using PID controllers. Okay. People have gone, of course, to digital PID controllers. So that is I'm talking of the practical aspect. But it's natural that at this point of time you won't get paper published by working. I won't say that you won't get paper published by working on PID controller. Okay. So if you talk in terms of research, there is a more scope for that, what you have called model predictive control. I have seen very good works in power electronics for mainly towards what you call the DC-DC converters, control of DC-DC converters, where people have used model predictive control. And though it is very computationally intensive, but still they have used it in a proper manner, right? So if you are going for research, model predictive control is a good area because there are much scope, because if you have gone through model predictive control, there are a large number of tuning parameters that you have to use. Okay, in that what will be the receding horizon, what will be prediction horizon, proper tuning of that prediction and receding horizon is a very big task even now. So from that aspect, of course, you can work on model predictive control.
Yes, sir. But we can do that. But immediate question that I'm getting that may be asked is that if it is not practically applied, still
I won't say that it is practically not applicable. I have seen some real-time execution of that. My friend Ritesh Keshri is working on model predictive control in VNIT Nagpur. They have implemented model predictive control on a DSP for DC-DC converter, and it is working quite well. See, it all depends on the requirement. Okay. It is not that you are not able to implement it. Okay. So here I will only say that a phase measurement unit is a sensor, which along with the standard measurements of magnitude and frequency, it also gives you an information regarding phase. Okay, and the information regarding phase has its own utility. I think you have a very good expert. Whatever I know of PMU is from Mahanta sir only. He will discuss more about this in the lecture. So I'm not, and since we have many people from this computer science and IT, I thought that I should, before ending, I should give you a brief idea regarding how a cyber attack is launched on a smart grid. Okay, so this is what we have discussed till now. Like in the one slide, I have told you about the physical infrastructure. That is the electrical components, core electrical components, generator, transmission line, and load. And then you have a sensor here. You have a sensor here. Here you have a smart sensor. Okay. Then you have a centralized controller, not a local controller, not a distributed controller, but a centralized controller, which is taking information from all the sensors, from the thousands and thousands of sensors, and then it is processing that information. And how that information it is getting, the smart sensor is acquiring that information. Now this green one is the communication channel. Okay. Through a communication channel, it is transmitting that information to the control center. And what is there in the control center? In the control center, we have servers. We have big data algorithms. And we have workstations, high-end computers. We have control algorithms also. Okay. So information is acquired by the smart sensors. It passes through the communication channel to the control center. In the control centers, which have all this. Now, suppose there is a disturbance. Suppose because of this what you call cyclone or something like that, a particular line is broken. Then, once the line gets broken, that information, there will be a change in the signal, and that signal, whatever the change in the signal that has happened, it would be captured by this sensor, and that information will be sent to the control center. And in the control system, you have big data algorithms for monitoring. So that algorithm will run, and based on the change in the sensor information that has come up, that algorithm will come up with a result telling that some change has happened, and that change has happened because of the line getting broken. Okay. And then that information will be passed through some hardware devices, and they what will do is that they will take the necessary corrective measure. The corrective measure may be, since this line is now broken, the generation will there will be another line which will come into effect like this. Okay. So first of all, you have to sense that this line has broken, and how that will be sensed? That will be sensed based on the information that has gone to the control center through the execution of the algorithm. Now, once you have detected the breaking up of the line, the next thing will be to implement a control measure to rectify that change that has taken place. So how that will be done? That will be done through the control algorithm. Is it clear? Now, suppose the control center is getting information from all the sensors through communication channels, which are shown in green. Now there is a hacker. This hacker, somehow he is able to access this communication channel. Okay, right. He or she is able to access this communication channel. Then can he cause some problem to you? Can you think of, suppose you are the hacker and you have been asked to completely misoperate the power network. What you should do? Suppose I have a signal X. When I get a signal, it means that operation is proper. Which operation is proper? That the power network is operating properly. So when this signal X goes to the control center, the algorithm tells that the operation is proper. Now, if you have a signal X dash, it means what? Line is broken. So this signal X dash goes into the controller, then the algorithm is executed, and then the algorithm comes up with the information that the line is broken. But suppose now the signal is X. Since the hacker is having access to the communication channel, he changes the signal from X to X dash. So the signal that the sensor is acquiring is X, but when the signal actually goes to the controller, it has become X dash. Why? Because the hacker, since it is having access to the communication channel, he or she can manipulate this information and change this information from X to X dash. So in that case, what the algorithm will provide you a result? The algorithm will give you a result that the line is broken. Even though the line is operating properly, then this line would have been shut down. Maybe some other line would have been shut down. If the same thing happens for this line also, for this sensor also, it is X and it is changed to X dash, because the hacker is having access to not only this communication channel as well, but it is having access to this communication channel also. Then both these two lines will be turned off even when the system is operating properly. In that way, what the hacker can do, it can cause huge damage to the entire network. Okay, right. This happens not only in smart grid, but in any physical system which is having cyber components. It is in any cyber physical system which is having both cyber component and physical component, there is a possibility of the communication network being attacked by an hacker, and that hacker can manipulate the signal that is going to the control center and can completely disrupt the operation of the entire cyber physical system. Okay, this has happened to some nuclear reactors in Iran. And I think those of you are from electrical engineering and you find this thing interesting, you can just search for an attack which happened in Ukraine. It is the first documented cyber attack in the world. And in India, last year in the month of, I suppose those of you are from Maharashtra, you might be knowing of, there was a particular power disruption that happened in the month of October in Mumbai. Okay, and these local trains went off and a substantial part of the, this city was without power. And that was many people, though it has not come up in the report, the MSRC report, but many people think that it is because of a cyber attack. And so that case was different, because in that case the hacker did not attack the communication channel, but the hacker actually attacked the control center. There was a big server in the control center, and the hacker was able to have access to that server, and by that way they were able to completely manipulate the entire operation of the power network. And Ukraine cyber attack is the, till now, it is the most documented cyber attack, and there was also a large amount of people were affected by it. Now the most problematic thing regarding a cyber attack is that physically nothing will happen. Okay, at the physical layer there won't be any change. It is only at the computation layer and the communication layer there will be change. Hence, when the cyber attack initially was executed in Ukraine, for the first 4 or 5 hours, people had no knowledge regarding what has happened. The power engineers, the utilities, they did not, everything was giving proper, proper reading. All the sensors were as such giving proper reading, but even then there was a disruption. So it was only after 5-6 hours they were able to come up with the conclusion that sensors were operating properly, the entire system was operating properly. There was a problem with the communication network. Somebody was able to break the protocol of that communication network. Okay, and now the the government of India is investing on this aspect of smart grid, and so in the near future this cyber attack on smart grid, or for that purpose the cyber security of smart grid, will come up with a very big area. And since the electrical engineers has a very limited work to do here, only at the physical layer, so the major contribution will come from the people from communication and computer science. Okay. So with this, I've taken a lot of your time, and I think I should conclude here, and we can have an interactive session. I would be very happy to answer your questions. So you please come forward and ask me something. Yes, either related to this or related to some research, or related, may not be completely related to what I have discussed here.
So participants, please raise your question if you have any.
Hello, afternoon,
yes,
sir. So regarding your cyber attack on the smart grid, I want to know what is the scope of the fault-tolerant control system?
Tolerant control system.
Hello.
Yes. What is the
scope of fault-tolerant control system?
Okay. Fault-tolerant system. See, that fault-tolerant control system is that we are actually talking in physical layer. Okay. Now, if you suppose, you have devised a very good fault-tolerant control system, and that fault-tolerant control system will come into effect only when there is a fault. Okay. Now, suppose there is a huge scope of cyber security here.
Excuse me, sir, just a minute. Cyber attack just as a...
So your fault tolerant control system, that controller should work when there is a fault in the system, right? And it should not work when there is the system operating properly. But suppose now the information that is going to the controller is improper. A faulty scenario is being represented as a normal scenario, and a normal scenario is represented as a faulty scenario. Controller will do your work. But if the information that is presented to the controller is not correct, somebody has manipulated it. The fault-tolerant control system, how good it may be, it will not operate, it will not be able to maintain a system in operation. So what you have to do is that before the fault-tolerant control system, you should have a module for determining whether the signal that is actually coming to the fault system is proper or somebody has hacked that particular signal. Okay. So there is a scope for it. You can come up with a module for attack detection before a fault tolerant controller. See, any controller, there is a scope for this work on cyber attack, because an attacker can either attack the controller, the program that is there in the controller, or what they can do is that they can manipulate the signal that is coming to the controller. Okay, I think your question is answered. Yes, please.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So thank you, sir. You have told the participants about the emerging areas in the field of smart grid and cyber physical systems. So thank you for your lecture. It was quite interesting. And you are requested to send the PPTs so that it can be shared with the participants.
Certain changes are required. Certain formatting I have to do. By tomorrow I will send it.
Okay, sir. You are requested to send the PPTs to me.
Yes. It is not properly formatted. I will send the PPT by tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you.